Hey everyone, and welcome to an 11.1 Balance Druid guide. This is going to be quite a quick, simple guide for you to get you caught up with how balance has changed, ready for the new season, or if you've never played it before, learn a few key components of how balance operates. If you do want a more advanced guide in the future where I break down the super in-depth stuff, just comment down below and I will do it, or come pester me on stream or something, and I will do it. If you are currently debating between whether to play Balance Druid or Feral Druid in DPS this season, I have a video for that, so you can go and check that one out as well. And if you generally just want some Feral Druid guides, I have those for you, so you can go check out all that stuff. With all that being said, let's jump into the video now. So a few basics, so I'll link to this at the end, just from the Wowhead guide, but there's a few basics in terms of consumables. So you're going to want like Flask of Alchemical Chaos, you're going to want Tempered Potion, Algari Mana Oil. Gems, you're going to want High Haste, Low Mastery. Weaponage head, you're going to want Authority of the Depths. That's the main bulk of just like the consumes there. Again, like I say, I'll link to that at the end of the video. You can check that out and spend your time decking out your character. But let's actually get into the core of the video here. So, Balance Druid is a builder-spender spec. So you're going to be generating Astral Power and then spending that Astral Power on either Star Surge or Starfall, depending on the scenario. You also are a dot spec, so you're going to have a couple of dots. You can choose to have additional in certain scenarios, but Moonfire, Sunfire, you're going to be dotting things up and playing around those dots. A lot of your damage is going to come from having really good dot saturation on everything you're in combat with, and having really good uptime there. And then lastly, you also have these things called Eclipse states. So if you notice when you play Balance, you have like a 2 next to your Wrath and a 2 next to your Starfire. If you do those, it will enter you into an Eclipse state. So if you do 2 of either one, it'll enter you in an Eclipse state. 2 Wraths will put you in Lunar, 2 Starfires will put you in Solar. These Eclipse states are key. They're going to facilitate a lot of your like talents and a lot of damage to come during your Eclipse states. Things like Balance of All Things is a talent that's going to be active during your Eclipse state. So very key to be in an Eclipse state as often as possible. So those are the 3 factors you're considering when you're playing Balance: builder, spender, maintaining your dots, and entering Eclipse states effectively. So I want to briefly talk about hero talents for you and which one should you choose and why. If you want to keep it super simple, you play Elun's Chosen in Mythic Plus and anything AOE based, and you play Keeper of the Grove in anything single target and most raid bosses. The reason being, Elun just does a lot of AoE and also single target focus damage. Your Furies of Elun will like explode in AoE and stuff, so there's just good AoE damage there. In terms of why you play Keeper of the Grove in single target, so you have the capstone on Keeper of the Grove called Harmony of the Grove, which means your Trents, which you have 3 of when you summon them, they will increase your damage by 8% per Trent. So you get 24% more damage for 10 seconds. And then also you can combine that with Convoke, and you get really good burst damage, really good single target, like everything's just getting pumped onto a single target. So it's really nice there. I would say if you're doing low-level Mythic Plus, which I imagine many of you are going to be doing at the beginning of the new season, I would recommend probably going Keeper of the Grove, though, in Mythic Plus, because things are not going to really live long enough for you to really ramp up with all of your dots and everything like that to really optimize for Elun's Chosen. So maybe consider playing Keeper of the Grove in Mythic Plus, where you can just blast damage a bit quicker, and your Trance are going to help you with your dotting of Moonfire and stuff like that. Now, let's very quickly talk about the tier set. So how does the tier set work? So your 2 set is your damaging spells have a chance to hit a jackpot, growing a wild mushroom at a nearby enemy. Casting Celestial Alignment or Incon always hits a jackpot, so there is a deterministic factor to it. Your 4 set means your Starfall and your Star Surge, both of your spenders, will cause your targets that are affected by wild mushrooms to take 20% more damage from Starfall and Star Surge, right? So when you have wild mushroom active on targets, you're going to do more damage with your finishers or your spenders. This is where mushroom is on the tree, so you are going to need to opt for it as a talent when you get your tier set. You can play an active or proactive version or a passive version. Most people I've been seeing have been playing the passive version. So there you are. Once you have the tier set, you're going to be wanting to play around this wild mushroom. So let's briefly talk about the class tree. Class tree, on the right hand side, you're going to get a lot of balance abilities. On the left hand side, you're going to get a lot of defensives. And in the middle, you're going to get a good mix of utility. The key things I want you to pick up here are damage amplifiers. Nurturing Instinct, magic damage and healing increased by 6%. Starlight Conduit, Wrath, Star Surge, and Starfire damage increased by 5%. Lore of the Grove, Moonfire, Sunfire damage increased by 10%. Lycara's Teachings, giving you additional stats, additional mastery. And then Circle of the Heavens, magic damage dealt by your spells increased by 5%. So that's the bulk of all of your damage increasing abilities. There's also things like Fluid Form, which are going to allow you to cast balance abilities even in bear form. So it's going to like allow you to lose less, like have less downtime if you need to bear defensively. Then there's a few defensive talents that you can take, a few little utility things. Not going to spend too much time on the class tree, but there it is. Okay. I want to very briefly talk about single target talents that are going to be very key, and then we'll get into some rotation. So key things that you want to know: once you get your 4 set, definitely get this mushroom talent, maybe even when you get the 2 set. You're absolutely going to want Force of Nature if you're running Keeper of the Grove. If I were to remove Keeper of the Grove now, you can see that fundamentally just bricks Keeper of the Grove, and it's just not usable. So you have to run Force of Nature if you're running Keeper of the Grove. The other thing to mention is that you're going to be running Convoke, as mentioned, so you're picking that in single target. You run Incon in AoE. You're also running Orbit Breaker in AoE. And you're running... in single target, And you're running Sundered Firmament in AoE, so that's like a little swap there. Then you have a couple talents which you're going to pick up. Nature's Balance is going to help you with Astral Power generation, so that's nice there. You wouldn't really care about it in AoE. You're then also going to want Power of Goldrin, extra single target. You're going to want Denizen of the Dream, extra single target. And then a really important thing here that really brings the build together is Balance of All Things. Entering an Eclipse state increases your crit strike chance with Arcane or Nature spells by 20%, decreasing by 2% every 1 second. So at the beginning of any Eclipse state or any cooldown window where you're using Incon or Celestial Alignment is going to have 20% increased crit. This is why crit is not as good for you, stat-wise. So Balance of All Things is very important for you to play around. Lastly, something to keep in mind is Waning Twilight. When you have 3 periodic effects on the target at one time, your spells and abilities are going to do 6% more damage. So when you have the Mushroom Dot plus Moonfire, Sunfire, you're going to do 6% more damage to that target. You might end up running Stellar Flare on single target before you get your tier set, because that's going to give you that 3rd dot before you maybe start running this Mushroom. Though, I guess we'll wait and see when the raid releases. But that's a general overview of single target talents. So that's then get into the rotation on single target. So on single target, you'd be looking to, when the countdown's at about 2 seconds, you would double Wrath, which will put you in an Eclipse state before the boss is like as the boss is pulled. You would then Sunfire, Moonfire, which is going to establish your dots. You would then Force of Nature, Celestial Alignment, and then you can Star Surge 3 times. This is going to start your cooldowns, but send all of your Astral Power, so that then when you Convoke, you don't overcap on Astral Power. Now, when you leave your Convoke, the next step can depend on sort of the factors, like if you're Bloodlusting on pull, you're getting PI, that kind of stuff. It's going to impact like your resource management. But generally, when you leave Convoke, you'll have a couple seconds left on your Eclipse, so you want to re-enter your Eclipse as soon as possible when that ends. And you also want to make sure that you'd want to be entering Solar Eclipse. So keep that in mind. So you do 2 Starfires. Don't overcap on Astral Power. So whilst you still have a couple seconds left on your Eclipse state, you might be capped on Astral Power, so you might want to send a little bit, but don't send all of it, because when you enter that new Eclipse state in a couple seconds, you'll then have Astral Power to spend, which is very beneficial. And then you just need to reapply your dots as and when required. And that's basically the crux of the single target rotation. So let's get into the AOE rotation and some AOE talent changes. So here's the talent build for AOE. Go Loon's Chosen. You're going to be grabbing Warrior of Elune instead of Force of Nature, which is just going to make your Starfires free, the next 3 ones anyway. You're going to drop Nature's Balance. You're going to pick up Twin Moons. You're going to drop Stellar Amplification. You're going to pick up Ethereal Kindling. Twin Moons is going to mean your Moonfire is going to multi-dot. Your Ethereal Kindling means that you're not going to have to... Apologies. Here we go. Your Ethereal Kindling is going to make it so your Starfall extends the duration of your Moonfire and Sunfire on all targets. So once you apply your dots, you shouldn't have to reapply them in AoE. You're going to be grabbing Incon instead of Convoke. You're going to grab Sundered Firmament instead of Orbit Breaker. You would drop Denizen of the Dream, and you would drop Goldrin, and you would instead pick up Fury of Elune and Radiant Moonlight. If I were to not take Fury of Elune, you can see this bricks Elune's Chosen. So this is a super important talent. You either take Fury of Elune, or you take New Moon. But then you need to make sure that you convert things over so that you're amplifying your Full Moon, or just keeping that in mind that you're amplifying your Full Moon, not your Fury of Elune, because you wouldn't have it. That's it when it comes to, like, talents. For this video, I can do a more in-depth video in future if you guys want. So then let's talk a little bit about rotational things. So, in AoE, you also would look to be double wrathing. Remember, you can only enter Lunar Eclipse when you're running Elune's Chosen. So you can only double wrath to put you in that window. Now, once you double wrathed to enter that eclipse, you're then going to Moonfire mobs as the tank is stacking everything up. Once everything is stacked up, you're going to do one Sunfire. Sunfire hits every mob, so you don't have to, like, you don't want to be doing it separately. Just wait for everything to be stacked and then press it one time. You can then press your Celestial Alignment, or your Incarn, I should say. You can then Fury of Elune, Warrior of Elune, which are your key cooldowns there, and then you're just Starfall spamming until you're low on Astral Power. Then you can Starfire, Starfall, Starfire, Starfall. And I'm sure you can guess what happens next. Make sure you don't overcap on Astral Power, so don't do like 3 Starfires in a row and then Starfall, because you'll overcap. Once your Eclipse State ends, you want to re-enter your Eclipse State by double wrathing. You'd Fury of Elune when available, and then you'd Starfall. Starfire, Starfall, Starfire, Starfall. It's very simple. One key thing to note is your Starfall stacks, so you can press it more than once. You don't have to wait for Starfall to end before you can use another one, so that is key to note. So a couple last things to mention before we talk about Balance's damage and potential position in the meta this season. So a couple things to consider when playing Balance. So it takes a while to dot things up efficiently, or sufficiently I should say. So don't rush. Make sure you're spending the time to dot everything up and then send all your cooldowns. In lower level dungeons, it's gonna suck, I know. But you just gotta suck it up until you get some free IO. Get boosted by the Rep Paladin for a couple dungeons, and then you get to start pumping. If you don't spread your dots effectively, you will not perform well as Balance. So just keep that in mind. Don't rush it. It's a fatal mistake. Try to only spend Astral Power during the early stages of your Eclipse when you have maximum crit from the Balance of All Things talent. But don't overcap. So keep those two things in mind. The more Moonfires you have spread on mobs, the more Astral Power you're going to generate. So there's not always a consistent intake of Astral Power. Depending on the mob count, it will dictate the speed at which you're going to get Astral Power. So there will be a little bit of a waxing and waning maybe of figuring out, okay, can I do another spell cast without overcapping or whatnot. So just keep that in mind. And because of the tier set, so remember, spells have a random chance to spawn a mushroom, so your Starfall and Star Surge can do more damage when those mushrooms, when those targets have the mushroom dot on them. Once you have the new tier set, just keep that in mind. And keep in mind Sundered Firmament. It is a talent which we spoke about, and it just means that your next Fury of Elune is going to, your next Eclipse state that you enter, Fury of Elune is going to be spawned. So try and save it for the beginning of a fresh pack. If you're in a pack of mobs and they're all almost dead, maybe don't enter that Eclipse state if you can just delay by 1 or 2 seconds. Obviously, don't delay your Eclipse by 10 seconds because you could have just got the value from that firmament. Keep those things in mind. So, how is Balance's damage? Is it going to be meta and all that? So, Balance seems to be performing well in Mythic Plus testing, at least in my experience from everything I've seen. It does, however, generally require mobs to live a long time for your ramp to be established. So if you're in lower level dungeons, you're probably not going to see the full value of Balance Druid. This is very common. We normally see the maximum value of Balance later in the season when key levels are higher. I think in low level keys, Keeper of the Grove is probably going to be better for most people. I'm talking +2s, 4s, 6s maybe even. It is now tankier as well than it was last season and previous seasons because of the class tree shuffle and just a couple talents that we now can, have easier access to. In Raid, there are going to be a couple key bosses where it may perform really well on. So Styx, for example, the trash boss, the trash heap boss, he's got a lot of split cleave, a lot of just kind of mass AoE sort of stuff that you got to deal with, but mobs are quite spread out, so balance will be very effective there. One-armed bandit, there's also some mobs, maybe more so on mythic, maybe less on like heroic and normal, but on mythic, one-armed bandit could be pretty good with the split cleave, depending on how quickly those mobs die and how quickly they need to die, so we'll wait and see with final tuning. Maybe also Muggsy, the second to last boss, but again, we'll see. Depends on strats and tactics and effective damage. And then who knows about Gallywix? Maybe. Right now, its closest competitors are Feral and Resto Druid. Obviously, we're all in the same class, so we bring the same benefits to a dungeon or to a raid. So we are competing with Resto, which looks good, and we are competing with Feral, and both of them are performing well. Many people seem to think that this is a Feral Druid season, but I've heard that many times before, so I'm not, I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch. No, I'm not counting my cats before they hatch, as the saying goes. But yeah, that's everything, guys. That's everything. Also, last thing is that we now have 2 sets of cooldowns. We have 2 sets of CI, or Celestial Alignment. And I don't know why I keep saying CI, but we have 2 sets of Celestial Alignment, or Incons. So you have cooldowns for like every single pack. So we have a lot more available damage. We don't just go big once every 3 minutes like we used to be. So that's a nice bonus. I'm going to link a couple resources for you guys so you can check out WoW Analyzer, really good for log reviewing to make sure that you're doing what you should be doing. It's not perfect, but it's a good start. Also, logs is a good way to look at like top ranking Moonkins and see like how are they playing fights. And then the Wowhead Balance Druid guide written by Tettles, who is a long-time Balance Druid. You can find him in the Dream Grove and stuff. Yeah, definitely check that out. Get your character decked out and set up, ready for the new patch. But that's everything from me. If you want a more in-depth breakdown of various talents and why things are what they are, let me know, and I will get that made for you. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and enjoy playing Balance this season.